Russian government's announced new measures to tackle the spread of COVID-19. It includes bigger penalties for breaching quarantine rules and a new system to track people who've had contact with others who've been infected. The Kremlin's refuted claims that such surveillance might violate civil liberties. Let's catch up with our correspondent in central Moscow, Igor Zhdanov. Hey there, Igor. What is the situation in Russia right now as it stands this morning?
Well, so far, Russia has more than 400 confirmed coronavirus cases. The epicenter, most of them are here in the Russian capital, in Moscow, just short of 300. Now, on top of that, more than 93,000 people here are under constant medical surveillance. Now, what it means, it does not have to necessarily mean that they're showing any symptoms. On the contrary, it's just people who have been in contact with those infected, and just to keep them quarantined, to keep them safe. So overall, it seems that the situation here in Russia is more or less still under control, but still new cases of infections are adding by the dozens daily.
It's being monitored daily, as you're saying, and the government's introduced new measures, yeah?
Yes, absolutely, because essentially the Russian government has outlined, well, I have to say, the key problem that helps the coronavirus spread. Because, for instance, a lot of people who are supposed to be self-isolated, the more than 93,000 that I've just talked about, and here in Moscow, for example, the elderly and those who have pre-existing conditions like asthma, also they must stay at home. But a lot of these people, they are ignoring this, and they still go out and endanger themselves and the others. So the Russian government has came up with a response.
The Ministry of Digital Development, Communications and Mass Media of the Russian Federation has been tasked with establishing a system for tracking down citizens who have been in contact with those infected with the novel coronavirus on the basis of their mobile phone geolocation data provided by telecom companies. Citizens will be notified via messages if they have been in contact with infected individuals and informed of the need to self-quarantine, with the data also being transmitted to regional authorities in charge of tackling the outbreak.
So it's effectively the Russian government will be using triangulation data that they receive from mobile carriers to track those people who may have been in contact with the coronavirus infected people, and to notify them that they are to stay at home. This is set to be implemented, by the end of this week already. But I mean, informing people is not enough if there's no means of enforcing it. So Russia is also set to toughen the penalties for those who still break the quarantine rules. Right now, if you do so, you are fined. If you infect somebody, that is a different story. That is a criminal offense. So these penalties are set to be toughened up too. Also Russia will be taking a whole slew of measures aimed at informing citizens both about the current up-to-date situation, this coronavirus situation in the country, and about the dangers of breaking the quarantine and so on.
Yeah, we're looking around the rest of Europe, seeing what's happening, for instance, in the UK now. It's pretty much got into a lockdown as from today. Russia's not there yet. I mean, how does what Russia's doing stack up against other countries' measures then, Igor?
Well, talking about tracking people down, Russia is essentially following the Chinese model. Well, the only model so far proven to be successful at containing and battling this new coronavirus pandemic. China has been tracking its citizens to see who's been in touch with the infected, to isolate them. So have been Hong Kong and South Korea. South Korea being one of the countries worst affected by this pandemic. Israel is in this club too, because they're using such measures to track down those infected by COVID-19 they would normally only use to prevent terrorism. On top of that, also Thailand is giving out special SIM cards to all travelers, well, for the purpose of tracking them down too. But as you've mentioned, Russia as a whole is not on quarantine. There are groups of people who must stay at home, those who have, again, came in contact with those infected, and here in Moscow, those in the groups of risk. But largely, people have been advised to stay at home as much as possible, to avoid public places, but it has not been enforced into a law, into a rule. So it seems that as of now, Russia is still hoping to avoid getting the whole country on lockdown.
Yeah, even looking over your shoulder there's still a lot of cars around, but noticeably much less people on the streets of Moscow. I've noticed that the last couple of days, especially today. All right, keep us posted, Igor, as any more headlines come in there in central Moscow. Thanks for now.